unite as one species or perish, just as many human civilizations prior to ours have done so when they came too close to knowing the truth. Light versus dark. Stop thinking in terms of nation-states, borders, races, ethnicities, etc. The light, and how it should be lived in actions, is described in an easily understandable way in both the New Testament and the Quran. Disregard those parts of the New Testament and the Quran which make you then dismiss the entirety of the text. The spirit of the scriptures is what matters. Religion is a man-made construct which institutionalizes that which was never meant to be institutionalized. If you come to know the spirit of each scripture, you will come to know truth. Christ was an extraterrestrial who allowed part of his consciousness to be born into a human form. When he spoke with God the Father, his human consciousness was in tune with his higher consciousness. He did not talk to God in the way all of us imagine it. One day, Christ's consciousness woke up and prompted him to start questioning Judaism as taught by the scribes and the Pharisees and the accompanying societal structure which dictated that only the scribes and the Pharisees were authorized to speak to the law of God, with everyone else relegated to trusting that with blind faith or be relegated to punishment. Christ's mission to earth was to show humanity that living in commune with the light would allow their consciousness to activate and be granted the wisdom long kept from them. God is the light, a universal force which gave life to all living things, thus making the very nature of all living things that of the light, the universal force which we call God. The Godhead of the Trinity is this force. Christ was the only Son of God, but Son is a human term, and it was never said that Christ was to be the only Son for time eternal. Christ was the first human of this cycle of humanity to have his consciousness activated with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is that which allows your consciousness to commune with the force of you live in tune and harmony with the light, living as nature created you. Christ was a prophet, but his words were misinterpreted and the apostles did not fully comprehend that the word was to be lived, not institutionalized as a game of Simon Says called religion. Christ chastised the scribes and the Pharisees for knowing how to enter heaven, yet not entering themselves and keeping the secret from the Jews. The scribes and the Pharisees were also extraterrestrials, and much of the pre-Christ Judaic laws were carryovers from the time of Hammurabi and the ancient Babylonians and ancient Assyrians. These many laws, which required one to be highly educated for a time when the vast majority couldn't read, were a way to keep humanity confused and blindly obedient to a system they were tricked into thinking would lead to their damnation if they did otherwise. The scribes and the Pharisees were third-dimensional human servants to an extraterrestrial race as well, the Draco-Reptilians. The scribes and Pharisees even say that they serve their satanic gods, Baal and Moloch, the gods of human sacrifice. The actual Draco-Reptilians had demons living in the fourth dimension, and these demons were those who controlled the scribes and the Pharisees. Conversely, angels existed in the fourth dimension as well and watched over Christ as he attempted to free this planet from the grips of the Draco-Reptilians. Their soldiers, the demons, hiding just out of sight on this planet in the fourth dimension, and their human subjects who were either themselves possessed or hybrids meant to serve the darkness. Early Christians, in a world where the polytheistic Roman Empire still ruled and the scribes and Pharisees still controlled ancient Israel, were considered a cult and were persecuted as a result. Eventually they found refuge in a Roman emperor converted in battle, the Council of Nicaea was convened, and the Catholic Church was established. But when Christ said, "Upon this rock you shall build my church," it was misinterpreted as building an actual institution. The truth of the message was that Earth, the rock, was to become a planet rescued and redeemed from the forces which rebelled against the inherent nature of all living things, the light, and became the fallen who sought to rule as gods themselves over humanity. This was a part of a long war which raged, and continues to rage, in our solar system and galaxy between light and dark. If you think what I am saying sounds very much like the Force of Star Wars and like Star Wars itself, it does, and yes, that is actually the truth. Whether Lucas was divinely inspired through a reactivated consciousness or was leaked this information, I do not know. Regardless, the films are actually a quite accurate representation of the nature of the universe and a modern interpretation of the Trinity. Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, in psychic experiments he conducted while in space, confirmed the existence of the fourth dimension, and which the CIA corroborated through many studies of its own, and then questioned whether or not all humans could tap into it via consciousness, the pineal gland, third eye, being where the Holy Spirit awakens to allow humans to tap into the light of the fourth dimension, or if it was only limited to certain humans. This I cannot answer, as I do not have the answer. But I can tell you that I have tapped into this fourth dimension, and it is why I am telling you all of this. I will explain more at the end. The Illuminati are those humans who are tapped into this consciousness as well, but use it to serve the dark spirits of the fourth dimension and the physical ETI race, Draco reptilians, maybe others which sit at the top. Freemasonry, whether started with good intentions or bad intentions, became an institution whereby these secrets were revealed and, over time, has created appendant societies such as Skull and Bones. The fourth-dimensional entities of darkness are able to remain hidden and in control by causing chaos, strife, confusion, heartache, death, violence, etc. among humanity over time. Religion became the means by which they tricked humanity into surrendering its free will. Christ is not a physical being who will return. Disregard the above statement. It is far too definitive regardless of what I've received from first-hand sources and documents which claim Christ was either actually a physical human-like, benevolent ETI who came to Earth or a man who channeled a higher consciousness. My biggest point is that humanity needs to start focusing on the spirit of scriptures and just get away from the man-made institution of that which was never to be an institution. Christ returns when all of humanity unites under the principles of nature, the light, and stops feeding these intermediary fourth-dimension forces of darkness. The idea of the second coming as taught and currently understood is a trick to make humanity surrender its free will and surrender creation of their reality to a false belief intentionally created by darkness and a twisting of the original teaching's intent and lesson. This is where Muhammad comes in. Muhammad, despite everything humanity has been taught, was a prophet just like Christ. The Quran calls Christ Isa and reveres him as the most important prophet and reveres Mary, his mother, in the same manner as Catholicism. Christ was the Lamb, the one given up for humanity and Earth in an attempt to liberate this planet and its inhabitants from control by the ETIs, Draco reptilians and probably others, their fourth-dimensional warriors, and their human servants who have long controlled the planet and driven humanity, in this cycle, away from discovering its true nature in an era where you are advanced enough to know, understand and comprehend the true nature of that which you call God Allah. Thus, while Islam was not meant to be an institutional religion just as Christianity was not meant to be, its name is worth examining. Isa equals Christ, Lamb equals the sacrifice of Isa Lamb equals Islam. Muhammad was sent to in order to set in stone those teachings of Christ, Isa which had been correctly interpreted and to offer clarification of those which had either been misinterpreted or intentionally twisted by servants of the fallen. While Muhammad specifically stated that Islam was not to divide off into different sects, man is flawed and fallible. Thus, his words were not heeded. However, since reality must be dealt with even when the reality goes against that which was taught, it is worth examining the two main sects of Islam. Shia Islam only calls for jihad as a means of defense when first attacked. It allows for song and dance. While it has definitely taken a hardline interpretation regarding women, as all of Islam has, its interpretation is far better than that of Sunni Islam and, were it to meet sincerely practiced Christianity halfway, the role of women would be accurately understood. Western culture's modern idea of feminism as equality is a twisting by forces of darkness. Women have equality under Western laws, yet women who decry what the patriarchy has done now seek to emulate those very men whom they blame for the world's woes. They then seek to obtain power, thinking that somehow female emulation of those they blame will result in a different outcome. See how darkness is so good at getting you to believe it is light. Modesty, among both men and women, is a necessity to live within the light so that humanity is not constantly focused on the physical and material. It is so that you will judge your fellow human, be they male or female, on their character and actions as opposed to religion, skin color, wealth, language, nationality, etc. Of course, the need for female equality only came about because males failed to adhere to this core tenet of balance, knowing the role of each sex so as to live in balance and harmony with nature, and each sex treating each other with the utmost of love and respect. Straying from that causes one to dominate the other, domination causes resentment, so on and so forth, and you end up where you are today. But I digress. Shia Islam, although there were never supposed to be sects, is the closest thing to Muhammad's validation of Christ's message as interpreted by humanity and Muhammad's correction of that which needed to be corrected. Shia Islam brought the concept of Tawhid, that God Allah is just the name given as a personification for that from which all living things derive, the universal force of light. The universal force of light which created you also gave you free will, and it was your job to exert your free will in accordance with the light so that humanity could one day be of a state in both knowledge and wisdom to liberate itself and join the larger community of its galactic brothers and sisters of different species who live with the light. Christ said that after 1,000 years, the beast was to be loosened from its shackles. This occurred in the 1560s with the celestial event of Nuremberg. This was the battle of heaven and hell, and this was when the fallen returned to earth and were made to test humanity in order to see how far it had progressed and whether that progression resulted in the messages being correctly interpreted and lived. John Milton's Paradise Lost was correct in its assertion that the battle had occurred. Everything since then has been a test of humanity to see if you could strike the balance of knowledge and wisdom as you entered an era in which knowledge would advance, especially from the 1800s onward, and challenge you at the temptation that your knowledge should supplant wisdom and that you yourselves could be God and try to solve your problems with what is, in the grand scheme of things, knowledge self-derived by a species that, currently, is akin to a child running around with a loaded gun. Your whore of Babylon, that woman who is not a woman, that woman who serves the darkness, the fourth dimension, and the Draco, is Queen Elizabeth. She was also Queen Victoria. Queen Elizabeth is a Draco reptilian, as are all members of the House of Windsor, and they sit in that city which quietly rules all of the world, London. More specifically, the city of London, separate from actual London, that place from where all the world's finances, your current god called money, are controlled. The warning given by General Cornwallis to General Washington, as detailed in Legions of Satan from 1781, is a historical truth. The dark bloodlines all tie back to the Draco, and Queen Elizabeth is the head. The royal family assisted the Rothschilds in the creation of Israel via the Balfour Declaration in order to corrupt and co-opt Judaism, by turning Zionism into Judaism, with the creation of a homeland for the Israelites, in direct defiance of their covenant with God. Israel is run by a secular government, and many of its top military and political leaders since the 1980s are former KGB assets, as the USSR was secretly controlled by Zionists. When the Cold War needed to end, the false securities George H.W. Bush and others created to the tune of $240 billion from September 10, 91 to September 13, 91 with a 10-year maturity were used to bankrupt the Soviet Union. Those securities were due to reach their maturation on September 13, 01, hence 9/11, CIA involvement, Mossad involvement, and Saudi Arabian involvement. Oh yeah, Saudi Arabia. How could I forget them? The House of Saud are Zionists masking as Arab Muslims. Great Britain created fundamentalist Wahhabi Sunni Islam in the 1700s. Great Britain also created a Zionist outpost in Turkey, then the Ottoman Empire with the Young Turk Revolution of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. There is actually a memo between one British foreign minister to another, in the era, detailing that this was the true nature of the Young Turk movement. It was Middle Eastern Freemasonry acting on behalf of Zionism. The War of 1812 was a scripted war in order to burn down Washington, D.C., embed British spies who would then go on to be multi-generational families of wealth and power in the United States, and have Washington, D.C. rebuilt as one of the Whore of Babylon's 7 flags on 7 continents, hence why D.C. is built as a symbolic homage to Zionism, Babylonian Talmudism. For that is what Zionism, which claims to be Judaism, actually is: Babylonian Talmudism. The worship and service of darkness by which men and women are recruited with promises of tremendous wealth and power, but who unknowingly have been walking humanity in this cycle to its death and destruction. The Civil War was an attempt to break apart the United States by European monarchies, led by the British royal family, supporting the Southern aristocracy who remained loyal to the British in the Revolution. The vast majority of Southerners were Scot-Irish, poor men who did not own slaves, whose ancestors came to the United States to flee tyranny of the Crown in their homelands. Do not fault them for fighting on behalf of the Southern United States, as they feared ever again falling under any sort of overarching system with tyrannical levels of power. The desired outcome of the Civil War failed. Lincoln refused to pay back his debt to the Rothschild Bank, and British agent John Wilkes Booth was thereby ordered to assassinate President Lincoln. From there, manifest destiny occurred. The Federal Reserve was soon established, and the United States, unknown to the common folks, fell under the rule of the Whore of Babylon and became a puppet state which began engaging colonialism. As many of you are very well aware, WWI and WWII were manufactured events beginning with the many wars in Europe of the 1800s. The OSS of WWII was a creation prompted by Britain's MI6, which ran an illegal propaganda campaign in the United States via a Canadian agent in order to turn the United States from being a neutral nation, only willing to join the war if attacked, into an ally of Britain via a media propaganda campaign in the US against Germany. The OSS became the CIA. The CIA learned of ETI existence and whom they really served. Third Reich remnants in Antarctica and their ETI allies made a truce with Eisenhower in 1952. The UFOs over DC, with Third Reich scientists repatriated to the United States under Operation Paperclip, used as negotiators, and Eisenhower signed the Grenada Treaty. CIA, in conjunction with the military-industrial complex, then runs wild and does whatever the hell it wants. Overthrows a democratically elected government in Iran since Mossadegh, president of Iran, refuses to play ball with the United States and Britain's demand for cheap oil access. Cheap oil access was only half-truth. MIC and oil tycoon allies needed to be placated while Babylonian Talmudism Zionists searched for their real objective, stargates in the Middle East. Yes, they exist. Iran was supposed to be the base of operations by which the United States and Great Britain, with their friendly ETI allies, would acquire the Stargate located in Iraq. It was sold to them as necessary to obtain control of the Stargate, otherwise enemy ETI would soon portal onto Earth. CIA tries to go behind Kennedy with trying to run a false flag in Cuba with a mini nuke on US forces. Kennedy fires Dulles, demands CIA turns over all info ETI and military, CIA, MIC involvement. Forces still loyal to Dulles in the CIA think little of Kennedy, and so by JFK. That was the day the United States, as it still exists in your head, officially died. Plans for 9/11 were made soon thereafter. The rest of the Cold War was scripted so that the US MIC could milk every last dollar from the conflict and put it into the central banks of modern nations, thus into the hands of the Rothschilds. and thus into the hands of the Whore of Babylon and the City of London, that city from whence the entire world is run. Iran. Iraq War was an attempt to have Iraq topple Iran so that the United States could then intervene on behalf of its plant, Saddam, in rebuilding Iran. In reality, it was to get a foothold for access to the Stargate. Iraq War I was a fiction as well, with the real objective being the Stargate. It failed, hence why the fraudulent securities were put in place from September 10, 91 to September 13, 91. 9/11 was then carried out. Taliban was blamed for supporting Al-Qaeda, a CIA creation, same as ISIS, thus allowing the United States to use Afghanistan as a base of operations. WMD claim made by one guy back in 1999, Germany's BND sits on it for a bit, tells Bush administration, CIA is never allowed to interview the guy, became known as Curveball. Didn't matter because war was planned years in advance with 9/11 as justification and to have the USSR out of the way by bankruptcy via fraudulent securities. We go to war with Iraq, we find the Stargate in an ancient Babylonian temple, Green Zone is built around it, military even has Stargate squads, literally their name, patrolling the Stargate in the Green Zone. CIA was taken over by Zionist forces on 9/11, Office of Naval Intelligence was specifically targeted by a missile on 9/11 at Pentagon because they refused to go along and had the SSP, Secret Space Program, as leverage to stop it. Department of Homeland Security is a Zionist foothold organization in the United States and was created under the Patriot Act to create a police state. CIA, Mossad, Pakistani ISI, Saudi Arabian intelligence, Jordanian intelligence all ultimately serve MI6 and Whore of Mystery Babylon. Something's set to happen on September 23, 2017, and odds are that it's not in your favor. Remember your rights. Remember your free will. Remember these words. Humanity's current cycle very likely depends on it. Russia isn't your enemy, Syria isn't your enemy, Islamic refugees are not your enemy. Your enemy is Mossad and the ruling Zionists of Israel. Your enemy is the CIA, private defense contractors like DIN Corporation and Stratfor, the heads of DHS. Your enemy is the royal family of GB and MI6, Mystery Babylon, the humanoid servants of the fourth-dimensional beings of darkness and the Draco-reptilian masters. And your current president? He is being held hostage at gunpoint. If you are in the U.S. military, it may be time to start questioning those above you, the orders you've been given, for who and for what you're actually fighting, and if it is truly in the interests of those you're sworn to protect, the principles you're sworn to protect, and in the interest of humanity as a whole. You create your reality. Truth can set you free without bloodshed, but know that you have been under attack for decades and it is the right of all humanity to unite and take back, by any means, that freedom endowed to them by their creator and nature, those inalienable rights which sparked a bunch of farmers and boys to rise up against the tyrannical power of the world in 1776. United humanity stands and survives. Divided humanity will fall. All that I have stated was learned in the past 9 months, and long-rumored things about the family into which I was born were confirmed via original source material, which had not seen the light of day in over 30 years, by original source material. I found this material the day before Easter 2017. Last fall, noticing Venus, the morning star, was brighter than any star in the sky, and doing things no planet should do. I sat outside one night and meditated, prayed to this light, asking for answers or guidance in relation to events of late which could not be explained. That evening my consciousness was taken to Antarctica and I was given a message by a woman, who looked like that which you'd call an angel, and received the message which set me on this course. From that time until I discovered the source material, I was guided by beings of light from that fourth dimension and soon learned how information was being given to me via synchronicity events and how I was to know that a discovery was an event. Believe me if you want. Reject me if you want. I care not because to say nothing would be condemning humanity. I went from caring only about myself and material matters, yet a spiritualist, to suddenly believing in the existence of a Godhead. I am that one revelation calls the evangelist. I was not supposed to be born, one was to come before me yet died in the womb. I was born to a family which set up the system, with good intention, to unknowingly allow all of the events after WWII to occur. I was born to a man whose father was a 32nd degree Freemason, convinced to join after WWII by a friend who lived near the Bush compound in Maine in his retired years. I'd spend summers up there. My family was a normal, well-to-do suburban family. Events in life changed in my 20s, and what happened from September to a few weeks ago was my awakening and my call to leave behind the rat race and pursuit of the material. Greater forces are at work. So many of you complain about the state of the world, yet expect change to come by the hand of those very people you elect and decry as corrupt. Complaining will not change corruption. You cannot bring about change by still playing within the current system. This system is set up to subjugate you and then destroy you, with only a few picked to remain, so that humanity is cast back to the Stone Age if you get too close to the truth. Humanity is close, and you have all the forces of darkness afraid that this time you'll win. Because humanity has knocked on the door before, only to retreat in fear at the last minute and allow the darkness to reset into a new cycle. I wasn't supposed to be born, yet I was, and was born into the family I described. The birth of a child, not mine, precipitated the start of my 9-month awakening. I was recruited into the CIA out of college. I was deep into Democratic politics and could have easily been in Seth Rich's shoes. I went through these past 9 months because I looked up to the morning star and asked for guidance. I turned away from the gold chalice and the serpent. I've been to Ephesus and prayed there while receiving the holy water. As a kid, almost from birth, I feared death. I said I had lived before and that this world felt foreign to me. I'd say I was home but not home. I now know who I am. I am that one revelation calls the evangelist. I cannot write to 6 of the 7 churches of Asia, for they were destroyed in the Armenian genocide. But there is one still left. So to all my brothers and sisters of humanity, who find the one, the force of light, be it through Christ or Muhammad, to you I say this: the false Israelites are those who think Israel, the anti-Christ. 6 points on the flag, 6 triangles on the flag, and the Pentagon, 6 within the Star of David on the flag, are those who serve the synagogue of Satan, Babylonian Talmudism. And you, the people of Palestine, are rightful descendants of Abraham, one of the 12 tribes, and I acknowledge your suffering. To all those Jews who still remain loyal to their belief, here I am to tell you that soon comes the one who brings the messianic message of salvation for all. To all the Christians, here I am. I bring the spirit of the word in preparation for the return of Christ. To the Muslims of the world, I acknowledge your suffering at the hands of the false Israelites who serve the synagogue of Satan, and so I now say this: I am the evangelist of revelation, yet also the one who acknowledges your suffering, speaks of you for redemption, and looks from the west to the east asking that you prepare to bring for the one called Al-Mahdi, for when Christ returns. You know that at that time, the two will join their forces as one. September 23, 2017. Victory of the Light.